Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Welcome back to Talking Books and Writing and Stuff, brought to you in part by the Rebel Typewriter Shop. It's in Saskatoon. You can look it up, and it's also run by Tom Chowalski. You might have seen his name out recently. He got a typewritten letter from Tom Hanks, so that's pretty encouraging. But we're not talking about typewriters today. We're talking about music with one of the original members of Wide Mouth Mason, and we have with us today, we have Safwan Javed calling from Saskatoon, and we're calling from somewhere in Saskatchewan as well, so we're on the same time zone. So how are things going for you guys? I think you're kind of excited about the release of Stew in vinyl form.
Yeah, things are going well. All things considered, in our current crazy times of COVID hyper-awareness and a long-needed awareness of the racial inequities of our world. But yeah, otherwise, things are going really well for us. We made Stew was our third album that was released in 2000, and it being the 20th anniversary of that, we thought it'd be cool if we could make a reissue, a vinyl version of it. Fans have been asking for vinyl versions of our back catalog for as far back as I can remember, and this seemed like a timely opportunity to give them some of that.
I had a badge 30 years ago or so that said vinyl is final. So
I don't know if it's final, but it sure as heck is cool. It's become, everyone has a vinyl collection now, and I think that's great. It's nice to have something tangible that you can, look at while you think about the music you're going to listen to or read the sleeve of, or it's just a different sort of tactile engagement with art that we may have lost with just streaming.
And like typewriters and vinyl, everything old is new again. It's all new again for a whole new bunch of people. So when you did the vinyl version, now did you have trouble getting it pressed? Because apparently a lot of pressing plants over the years shut down, and now they're scrambling to get back up again.
Yeah, there aren't as many around as certainly not in peak vinyl era. But no, we didn't have any trouble. There are enough out there now because it's become such a trend that that part wasn't a challenge at all. And now there's really good engineers and people who master records out there who can take whatever you got, even if you only have it in a digital format, and master it so it fits well for vinyl, so it's not making the needle bump or anything like that.
That's great. And this is Safwan talking to us here from Wide Mouth Mason here on Talking Books, and talking more about the Stew re-release. Now that's out there now, is it, or is it coming soon? The vinyl is for sale now. It gets shipped, I think, at the end of November or end of October. So it should, if you buy it now, you should be receiving that beginning in November, probably, if you're in Canada or US. It might be a little longer to ship if it's overseas, but that kind of all depends on, the particular mail system and what's going on with COVID. But yeah, it's the vinyl itself is for sale, and there's actually a single that we pressed with it, limited copies of, that was never released with Stew. It was from the Stew recording sessions or recording session era. And stylistically, it fits with the songs from Stew, but it wasn't put on the album. And so now we're releasing that as a bonus track, which you can, if you get, I think in the first 50 copies or 75 copies of the vinyl of Stew, you get the single as well. And I think down the road it'll also get put up on all your streaming services and where people typically go to get digital access. And Safwan is with us from Wide Mouth Mason. Can you walk us through the process, like to get this on vinyl? You had the master tapes, I assume, and then what happens from there?
Well, ours is a situation where the rights for this album are held by Warner Music Canada. They released our first four, our first four albums.
we did have one before that. That was an indie release, but the first album with Warner was basically a re-recording of a bunch of those tracks from the first indie album that we had. So anyway, this was the rights to Stew are held by Warner. They had never made a vinyl version of it. They had pressed it to CD. Eventually, it got put on the digital service platforms. So we had to figure out, okay, well, what do we need to do to be able to reissue this in vinyl? And we had a bunch of back and forth with Warner trying to figure out what made sense for them, what made sense for us. We kind of sorted out all of the rights issues and figured out what, a way that everybody kind of wins on it. And then we had to get the masters. I think the masters for this were not on tape, they were digital. And so we had to then take that and get it. The mixes, we stuck with what we had for vinyl mixes anyway, but we had to get it remastered for vinyl. So you take it to someone to master it for vinyl pressing. They do a bunch of test runs to make sure everything's in line, and that's it. Off you go. You go get it pressed.
So they get a master vinyl, as it were, and then press copies from that? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think that's what they do. They need to get the main plate, and then they press off of that. And then that's just for the audio and physical vinyl side. That we also had to get line everything up for the artwork, because the artwork wasn't originally made to be put on vinyl. So you have the CD booklet, but that's not what the vinyl is going to look like. Things are going to get blown up. Things are going to move around in terms of size. So we had to go through all the artwork, figure out what made sense, get someone to do some retouching of that and editing of that to make it fit, figure out sort of what was going to be on the inner part of the vinyl itself. So yeah, there were a bunch more steps than what we I think anticipated going in, but it was fun to do. It was fun to revisit all that stuff.
Now, how is the music there different on Stew from what you're doing now?
Well, Stew it was almost a concept album. Stew came during an era where we were listening to a lot of things like Sly and the Family Stone, or the Meters, or Jimi Hendrix Band of Gypsies, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, sort of all the like funkier R&B soul side of the great catalog of music in the world. And so that started seeping into what we were doing live, and we felt like we wanted to make an album that incorporated some of that as well. So we really kind of studied all those bands and studied the albums by those bands that we loved, and kind of deconstructed and broke them down to their component parts to see what made them, undeniably funky, what made them do that thing that they do in terms of the groove. And so Stew then became our sort of manifestation of all that work, of that labor of trying to understand that musical genre and those records that we love so much, and then filtered through, the filter of what is Wide Mouth Mason, and the result was Stew. So it's a pretty unique album in our catalog. Having said that, we always kind of feel like, well, it's us playing it, so it's always going to sound something like us. But yeah, it certainly doesn't feel like, it would be immediately obvious that if you took the bed tracks and took the vocals away, if you listen to Stew and listen to our latest album, which is called I Want to Go With You, which we just released at the end of 2019, those are two very different sounding things, both in terms of the sonic space they take up, the tones that are used, even how they were recorded. Stew was really constructed, where we'd layer parts, we'd break parts down and rejig them together in a way that made sense. Again, with an eye towards emulating those funk component parts that we talked about. Whereas I Want to Go With You, last year's record, is a really stripped down blues record that's us just basically playing live off the floor. So a really different approach, and I think you can hear that.
And that's on the Stew vinyl release coming out, and you can get it, order it, or look for it in stores pretty soon. Safwan is with us from Wide Mouth Mason. Now, you guys, at least two out of the three of you, have been together since 1995. So how did you all meet up in the first place?
Well, actually, we've been this band since 1995, but Shaun and I, we were the first other people that we played music with in grade 4, I think. So we were like 9 or 10 years old. We were at public school together in the same grade, same class. We were already kind of buddies. I was over at his place for a sleepover, I think, and he had his first guitar. He'd just gotten it like maybe the week before. And so we just kind of jammed. I didn't have drums at his place, obviously, so his mom just put out pots and pans, and I hit those, and he played what the three chords that he knew at that point. And that was the beginning. We would play together in school band, in both the concert band and jazz band, and then we went to high school together as well. So again, we were both part of the band program there. And would play off and on, not just in the band program, but also just on the side with each other or with other people. And then after high school is when we started kind of putting together various iterations of Shaun, myself, and other musicians we knew, and eventually that became Wide Mouth Mason.
Now, of course, there's a story behind the name, I'm sure.
There always a story behind the name. It's not as exciting as it might seem. It was basically, we were a cover band at that point, playing small town bars in Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, Northwest Territories even. And our agent at that point would just kind of book us under whatever name he picked, and often they were just horrible names. So we were like, okay, we got to come up with our own, so that at least we have ownership of that. And so one day, at that point we'd already been starting to listen to quite a bit of blues, Clarence Gatemouth Brown, things like that. And so I think I was drinking out of a Wide Mouth Mason jar, and it said Wide Mouth Mason on it. And we're talking about the name, and I just so happened to look down and said, hey, this sounds like an old blues guy. We should use this. And the other guys agreed. So there you go.
Well, sort of like your Blind Lemon Jefferson and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Wide Mouth Mason.
Pine Top Perkins, there's a blues tradition of that.
That's right. And you were speaking earlier about Sly and the Family Stone and Marvin Gaye. That's kind of from my era, because I'm older than your grandparents. So
you had a good era.
Did you ever get in like George Clinton and Parliament and?
Damn straight. Of course we did. Yeah,
good.
Those are the founding fathers of funk right there.
We want the funk. Give us the funk.
Yeah. Damn straight.
So, Wide Mouth Mason then been together, like you say, about 1995 or so. Do you know what your first paying gig was under that name?
Oh man, under that name, what was our first? I can't say for sure. It would have been around the time we started to play in blues bars. Because we'd gained enough sort of steam as a cover band that we could draw people. People would come out to see us, and that automatically kind of endeared us to the different blues rooms in Western Canada, like Bud's on Broadway in Saskatoon, or the King Eddie in Calgary, or the Yale in Vancouver.
I used to go to the Yale all the time.
Yeah, what a great room that was. And so we would go and play our sets there, and like I said, we were starting to get really into the blues, so our sets were basically made up of mostly blues covers, and then we'd start slipping in our original. So I would have imagined it would have been around that time, and so it might have been one of those rooms. It might have been the Sidetrack Cafe in Edmonton, which was an early stop for us that treated us really well and that we got a lot of run in. I would imagine it was probably one of those.
Gotcha. And Safwan is with us from Wide Mouth Mason, talking about the new release coming up, Stew, a vinyl reissue, 20-year anniversary thingy. And then, 1995, you officially formed as Wide Mouth Mason. Things got rolling. Do you recall what the first really big-time date was?
I do recall that our first kind of exposure to touring outside of Western Canada was with Big Sugar. We did a show with them in Saskatoon, and our manager just kept hounding their singer Gordie Johnson to come and listen to us, and so he did. And I guess he liked what he saw and heard, and he invited us to do the rest of the tour with them. And we did, and they just had a bunch of really good, they had a really good run on radio. Like they had, I think Digging a Hole was just out and was charting really well. So they were playing the sold out rooms right across Canada. And, we were unknown outside of Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. So it was a big opportunity for us. And it happened to line up with us just getting a record deal with Warner And so I think that was probably a critical piece in the ball really getting rolling.
And now, of course, things have sort of gone full circle, and Gordie Johnson is in the band now, is he?
He is off and on. He has been. In 2010, we were going to make. We were on the verge of making the next record that was in line. It ended up being a record called No Bad Days, and he stepped in. We got a tour offer to go on the road with ZZ Top, and we needed a bass player, and we were asking him, who do you got any recommendations? He said, let me think about it. And he called us back the next day and said, yeah, I think I should do it. And we're like, okay, cool, man. And we were really close friends, and we were going to be making that record with him anyway. And he knows us inside out, and we know him inside out. So we said, yeah, let's do it. And we went on the road for, I think it was like 15 dates with ZZ Top across Canada. And it was so much fun. And we had plenty of hilarious nights with Billy Gibbons. And it was just so much fun that we all kind of walked away saying that shouldn't have just been a one-off. That should be like, you should be doing this with us all the time. And so he ended up playing on all of the record for No Bad Days and touring with us for 3 or 4 years after that as our bass player. From time to time, he'll still show up at gigs, and if it lines up, he'll come up and play, whether it's guitar or bass or singing or maybe a horn instrument, whatever works for him. But yeah, that was, and like you said, he produced Stu. So, the relationship has been a long and deep one, and he's one of our closest musical and otherwise friends.
So we're talking with Safwan Javed from Wide Mouth Mason. The band officially as Wide Mouth Mason was in 1995. They got rolling on this Success Train track. And originally it was you and Shaun and Earl. Now, Earl left. Was that sort of a mutually agreed on thing? Like, you always hear stories about bands who are at each other's throats for years and stuff. Or is this just one of those, hey guys, I got to do something else? And they go, yeah, sure. I mean, is that how it worked? Or
that's how it ended up being. It maybe wasn't. It's never as clean as that because there's emotions involved and.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get any dirty laundry, but just how does that kind of work? On the business side of things.
On the business side of things, it's complicated because you got to figure out, well, if someone wants to leave, what does that mean in terms of what they've contributed and the fact that they will no longer be contributing? How do you figure out, for example, if you have gigs, are those based on what the contributions of that band member were from previous years, or are those based on what you're doing now, or is it a combination? And if it's a combination, then what does that mean? How much goes to who? It's really complicated. So, you try not to get lawyers involved, but and see if you can figure it out. But yeah, it's not a fun process. It is fun when you get to a place where everyone's kind of doing the thing that they want to do and that they love doing, and that's where we've kind of all ended up. So it's good.
That's good. Can you tell us what your biggest payday ever was?
I don't know if I can remember off the top of my head what the biggest payday was, but usually when you see bands touring, the Monday night shows usually aren't going to be paying much. It's usually the weekend ones that'll be more, or special events like Halloween or New Year's Eve. And then the bigger paydays, I don't know if I should be even saying this, but typically the bigger paydays are what some agents like to refer to as funny money, where it's a corporate gig and some corporate entity will hire you to do a private event. We don't tend to do too many of those. We certainly not. Now we barely do any, but even back in the day, it was only on occasion you'd do it. But yeah, those are usually the big paying gigs.
Gotcha. What was the hardest lesson you guys had to learn about the music business?
Oh, wow. The hardest lesson about the music business. I guess that, I guess that you better be committed to doing this because you love doing it. There's a joke that a bunch of Canadian musician friends of ours will often tell to each other, or a line that we always tell to each other and laugh, which is, there's nothing more humbling than being a musician in Canada. And there's really some truth to that. But yeah, I guess it's maybe not I guess it's hard, but it's also an important lesson to learn, is that if you're doing this, you sure better be doing it because you just love making music and you have to do it, and you don't really have a choice, because otherwise it can be a pretty bumpy ride.
This is Safwan Javed here from Wide Mouth Mason, talking about their latest record, or a reissue, called Stew. Now, on the record, the vinyl that's let's say out there now, one way or another, are those all original songs on it?
Yeah, they are. I think, with the exception of, I'm trying to think which ones had covers on them. The last one, the newest one, I Want to Go With You, has one cover of a David Bowie track on it. I think other than that, every other song on every record is an original.
Gotcha. And how is your writing process? Do you write together or singly, or how does that work?
It's mixed. It depends on the record, depends on the song, depends on the era of our band. Typically, early on especially, it was a lot of songs would germinate from us jamming, whether that was like in my basement or during shows, in the middle of a song, we maybe would go off on a tangent. And then that started developing into a more sort of on-purpose thing where we take time out to just songwrite and just demo stuff. We just come up with we called them embryos. And those were largely collaborative. Now, because of the distance between us, it's the process has morphed again, where Shaun will bring more fully developed ideas, and then we'll kind of pick them apart and again deconstruct and reconstruct and figure out what works where, and sometimes come up with stuff on the fly.
So, where are you guys based now? Who's living where?
I live in Toronto. Shaun lives in Vancouver, so it's a big distance.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. On tour, when you were on tour with some of those big names, do you have any big thrill memories from those big tours?
I just, I don't know if thrill is how I'd characterize it. I was really, I think we kind of felt honored to be, on those bills. It was, cool to see things operate at that level, and how how many people it took, first of all, to pull all of that off, and what kind of organization that required. And again, everyone's sort of commitment to their craft, whether it was the actual musicians or the guys, stringing up and running the lighting rig, or setting up and taking down the stage, or, the crazy catering stuff. Like at every level, you see professionals plying their trade, and working really hard. And I think that was humbling, and I think we really appreciated seeing that and tried to incorporate that into what we do ourselves. Certainly, like I said earlier about the about the ZZ Top hangs, Billy Gibbons became a good friend and a guy that we would go and hang out with, and there's some hilarious stories from that which probably aren't fit for air. But the guy is a great guy, and we have a lot of love for him. And just meeting all those people and seeing how some of them especially would come off as really real and warm and welcoming. Like Charlie Watts was really cool to us from the Rolling Stones. He would come and take us into their inner sanctum to go and eat in the band's area, and he's just really welcoming and just a lovely fellow. And Brian Johnston from AC/DC was also like that, really warm and welcoming, and made a point of coming to talk to us and telling us what he dug. And just to see people at that level still sort of come and be approachable and be personable, it just kind of reminds you of what it means to be a good person regardless of your station in life.
Exactly. And did you get any free T-shirts?
I don't know. I know that I think Keith Richards tried to get Shaun to give him the shirt that Shaun was wearing. I think he ended up not doing it because he didn't, because then he'd have to walk out shirtless. But I don't remember. I'm sure we've gotten some free T-shirts somewhere along the way.
But like you say, it's like when we watch, as a standby spectator such as myself, I watch a figure skater, hockey player, and it makes it look so easy, and then until you try to do it yourself. So all these shows, everybody thinks it's so easy until you're behind the scenes seeing how it actually works. So.
Yeah, that's right. It's really true.
And we're talking with Safwan Javed from Widemouth Mason. Before we go, can you give us a plug for your record? Where do we reach Widemouth Mason on the internet and things like that?
Well, you can find any information about us on our website, which is widemouthmason.com. You can also get links to everything and find out a bunch of information on our social media accounts. We are active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, all one word, Widemouth Mason. And that also, all of those places will include links to being able to purchase the vinyl reissue of Stew, as well as the album that we released last year called I Want to Go With You.
Super. This has been the Widemouth Mason Show here on Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. Safwan has been with us. Best of luck from now on, you guys. Thanks very much for this.
All right on, man. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.